Hello, my good friends. How you doing today? This is episode 9 of BTD5 Science, and today I want to talk about dark energy. So I have to let you guys know that this is one of those things that we just don't really understand very well, and if I have a hard time explaining it, you have to give me a little bit of a break because this stuff is freaking complicated. So I'll do my very best to try and make you guys understand it. If I do have any questions or anything, go ahead and I'll try and answer those in the comments. Leave them down there, and I'll just give me some time. I'll get back to you guys. So, we need some backstory. We need to go over some things that happened in the past. So, about 100 years ago or so, Einstein created the general theory of relativity. And when he created this thing, he had a bunch of equations that go along with it. And with these equations, he thought that the universe was static. So, the universe doesn't really get bigger, it doesn't get smaller. That's what he thought back in the day, which, of course, no offense to him, that's what everybody thought. And with his equations, the only way that the static universe made sense is if he threw in some random number, and he called this random number the cosmological constant. So he just threw a random number into his equations to make things make sense with a static universe. And then, later, there was this guy named Edwin Hubble, and you might have heard of the Hubble telescope, they named it after this guy. He found out that the universe was not just static, it didn't stay the same, it actually is expanding. He looked at the galaxies, and the galaxies, the further they were, the more redshift we were getting. So we're getting a bunch of redshift from these galaxies, which means that things are actually moving further away from us. And with that, Einstein was still alive at this point. He basically said that, okay, if that's the case, then we don't even need this cosmological constant that says the universe is static. So he just threw it out of his equations, and everything was good for a really long time. Yeah, oh, amazing. And then all of a sudden, about 2000 or so, maybe a little bit before that, we found out that the universe is not just expanding, but it's expanding at an exponential rate. So everything that is close to us is getting further away from us, but everything that's really, really far is moving really, really far away from us. So the further stuff you get away from us, the further things are getting, or the faster they seem to be moving away. So, also, we have to understand that empty space is not just empty space. So when things are moving away from each other, they're not really just moving away from each other. There's actually more space being made. So there's more space being made in between two objects. Which means that, this doesn't really make much sense because all of a sudden these things tend to be moving further away, but they're not actually just moving further away, we're just getting more space in between things. So what's happening to this space? We can't just make more space, can you? Well, kind of. That's what we think dark energy is. Everywhere where you're getting more space, you're getting more dark energy. And that just seemed really freaking crazy because how do you just get dark energy out of nowhere? If you've heard of a lot of things, you've usually heard of the fact that energy can be neither created nor destroyed, which of course makes sense to all of us, but also dark energy is not really energy, which is a huge mega problem. If dark energy is not actually energy, what is it? I don't know. You can try and look it up if you want, but nobody really knows what it is. So, that being the case, it's not actual energy. And that, therefore, it doesn't actually matter what the energy is neither being created nor destroyed thing. So you don't have to worry about that at all. We don't actually know what it is exactly, but it's not creating energy. So what do we know? Well, we know, or we think we know, that it probably permeates all of space, and we also know that something, probably dark energy, accelerates the expansion of the universe. So what type of dark energy might there be? There's probably two-ish types of dark energy that we've theorized. The first one is that dark energy is basically just everywhere. It's a homogeneous in nature where it's just everywhere throughout the entire universe. There's no spot where there's no dark energy, and there's no spot where there's a ton of dark energy. It's just kind of everywhere in a reasonable amount. And then there's type number 2, which means that it's called a scalar, but it says that energy density can vary in time and space, which just means it could be in a large amount, could be in a small amount. We tend to think that it's more along the lines of homogeneous, basically evenly spread out throughout the entire universe. So also, why couldn't somebody just say, hey, I'm just going to make something up to look really smart. Why don't I just say, hey, dark energy exists, and then I can be a genius? Well, that could happen, I guess. Why can't people just make things up and say that they have evidence for it, even if they don't really have evidence for it? Well, we do have some evidence for this dark energy, and let me go over the 3 evidences that we have, or the 3 sets of evidence that we think we have, and they're not exactly perfect. I'm not going to lie to you guys. They're not very good at all, to be honest. But they do make sense, and they're a reason that we need to have something to help fit these equations and things that we have. Otherwise, the universe just doesn't make much sense without dark energy. So here's number one. Number one is the distance measurements and the redshift. Basically, for nearly half of its life, the universe has been expanding exponentially. So if you know how the Big Bang happened, the Big Bang, basically the universe started expanding and expanding, expanding, and it just kind of was like a normal expansion. And then all of a sudden, whoa, something crazy happened. The universe started to not expand so much. So gravity was actually taking over. That's what we expect to happen. Gravity's supposed to crush things together, and there might have been a big crunch. But then this crazy thing called maybe dark energy started making the universe expand further out and further out, and that's what we think dark energy is. It's making the universe expand exponentially. And then number two, we observe a flat universe, which only really makes sense if dark energy exists, and it goes into a lot more complicated equations and things of why that actually makes sense, but it does, just trust me on it. And then also number three, unless we have some sort of if they infer something that has to cause large-scale wave patterns of mass density in the universe. So basically, nothing too crazy there, but if you have some sort of mass in a certain part of the universe, it only really makes sense if dark energy exists, because there's a lot of random mass in certain areas that we don't really think makes 100% sense. So how does dark energy work? It is only affected by gravity, so there's no other fundamental forces in the universe that affect it. So it's kind of hard to study it if the only thing that actually is affected by it is gravity. Also, it has a constant negative pressure, which means that it likes to repulse itself, so it pushes things further away from itself. So the more dark energy you get, the more repulsive nature you're going to get, the more repulsion you're going to get. And that means, things are going to keep moving. The more dark energy you get, the further away things are going to get, and the faster things are going to get away, move away from each other, and that makes sense, of course. So what does dark energy mean for the fate of the universe? In the far, far future, dark energy will make the universe spread out more and more over time, and eventually galaxies will be moving so far away from us, faster than the speed of light, therefore their light will never actually reach us. So if you just imagine our galaxy just kind of sitting there, almost motionless, but it's not, of course. And then you have a distant galaxy, a pretty darn distant galaxy. It's going to be moving further and further away from us. As time goes on, it's going to be moving faster and faster, and eventually it's going to get so fast that the light will never actually reach us. But also you have to think that it's not really moving faster and faster. But I'll get to that in a second. I said nothing can move faster than the speed of light. So I can totally understand your confusion, but because of the local inertial frame of reference, the galaxies are basically constrained to less than the speed of light. So just to further explain that, each individual galaxy is not actually moving faster. The space in between each galaxy is just becoming more and more. So the galaxy seems to be moving faster away when space in between is just expanding. You're just getting more and more space. So the galaxy, even though it's very far away, is not actually moving much faster. It's just that the space in between is getting bigger. And I've repeated that quite a few times, and that's because it's a very complicated thing to understand, so I wanted to make sure you guys tried and understand it just a little bit. Anyways, that's all I have for dark energy. Like I said, very, very complicated topic. I probably don't know 100% exactly what I'm talking about, but hopefully you guys can learn some stuff from me. And if I made any mistakes in the video, please let me know. I'll put an annotation in there to fix it. Sorry if I jumped around in my words a little bit. It's very complicated. So have a great day.